Welcome to Letters from America, a road trip podcast searching for the Swedish heritage within the United States. I'm your host, Martin Värn, and today I've parked the Volvo in the southern part of Denver, Colorado. And with me in the Airstream is Donald Glenn Peterson, or Sir Donald. And we're going to get to that because there's a story in your family that for me sounds a little bit epic, and it starts with war, culminates in a way, I wouldn't say end, but culminates with a knightlyhood, right?
That's correct.
And I will try to do it justice. I will try to my best to do it, but can we start there with the war? Was it great?
Grandfather
Came here from Sweden.
Exactly.
In the early 1900s, right?
Correct. Right during, World War I.
Yeah. And he joined the army, the first thing he did.
So he was, his name was Enoch Peterson, but when he landed on Ellis Island, it was with 2 T's and 2 S's, Pettersson. They said, way too many letters. We are removing 1 T and 1 S.
They did that.
They did that. And so we've done a genealogical research on him, and we realized when he came to the U.S., first of all, he was one of 13 children. And in Sweden at that time, there was a famine. It was very difficult times. And
but he came alone.
He came alone. He did have an aunt who was his sponsor, who was here in Iowa. And so she was going, he had a place to go. And he wanted to have a newspaper ultimately. So he had studied English by hand-setting type, and actually in Denmark and part of Sweden before he came to the U.S., so he had a skill.
Yeah.
But
so he was determined to start a newspaper when he came here.
Absolutely. And so, but one of the first things he did was volunteer in the U.S. Army, and he was stationed literally in the trenches in France during World War I and survived. We still have his uniform and his helmet and so on. And when you do that, the United States then waives the usual 5-year naturalization time. So when he got out of the Army, he was immediately naturalized, and he could essentially start a business.
So do you think that was a tactical move from him? Or
I think
was
so.
It just
I think so. To come from a different foreign country and immediately go and essentially risk your life for the new country.
Yeah.
And so it was quite a tactical move for him. But on the other hand, then you have a place to stay. They feed you. And as long as you survive in the trenches, literally he was in France.
But that also tells a lot about what, at least in my mind, without knowing really, what he left. If you're willing to do that to get, to be American in a way, it tells you a lot about what he left behind.
Yeah. And part of the genealogical search was we found out on the Ellis Island, it said Enoch and then NMN Pettersson. We wondered, what is this MNN?
Yeah.
Later I learned that's no middle name. That stands for no. And also learned that because of the famine and the health issues in Sweden, when you're one of 13 children, you might not live.
No.
Many babies died within the first year. And so on purpose, they're not giving them a full middle name. Just first and last. And so...
Just to sort of be not too attached to it in a way.
Yeah, in a way. So
what happened to his family then? The family that he... in a way left in Sweden.
It was in Värmland, and they were a farmer. His father was a farmer. We have the last picture of as he was saying goodbye to his father. So they knew he was leaving. He didn't just run away. But it was pretty clear that it was going to be a very tough life and not a lot to look forward to at the time. So the family continued on the farm, and we have later since visited, and the farmhouse has since
you've been
collapsed.
At the farm.
Yes.
Oh, wow.
Yes. So, later we went on one of the last voyages of the Kungsholm from the New York harbor to Göteborg, and then took a train and actually bought a Volvo and drove to the area where the farm was so he could see that area.
So he came back from the war that he fought in France, in the trenches in France.
Correct.
And he started a newspaper.
Yes, so he didn't immediately come to Denver. He was looking for a newspaper he could purchase, but he was still learning the newspaper trade. So he worked at different papers in Chicago and Minnesota, finally came to Denver, and there were 2 Swedes who had a Swedish newspaper here, and they wanted to sell it at the time. It was called Svenska Västerns Nyheter, and so it was the Swedish Western News. It was a weekly paper.
In Swedish?
And partly in Swedish and partly in English. And so, but it weekly, and it had many subscribers both in Colorado, but also in Sweden. And the interesting part was he would run ads in the paper to bring Swedish immigrants. So he was a notary, and he would notarize the job acceptance letters from various employers. And it would be anything from miners or logging type thing, jobs, but then those people could get a visa. And he sponsored a lot of people to come to the U.S.
Do you know, or do you... Because you said that his father was a farmer in Värmland. Where did this idea of newspaper arrive in this young man?
Yeah.
Where did that come from?
That was a good question. I think he wanted to learn English. And back then, all the newspapers was hand-set type. Every letter was hand-set.
Yeah.
And so... he was a typesetter. But then, when he bought this newspaper, it had, everybody know, that had a linotype. Line of type. It was a machine that had like a million moving parts, and it was a German invention, but it revamped the newspaper business. And he loved any kind of a machine that you had to constantly maintain it. It required an engineering kind of a, not background as such, but it was always something breaking down. But it would literally do a line of type, and that's what the newspaper could be set
It
on.
would adjust itself to that line of... Oh, that's interesting.
Yeah.
So what happened to the newspaper? They did...
Yeah, so one of the things that happened when he first opened, he was like the Facebook of the time, the newspaper. Meaning there were 7 Swedish churches, mostly Lutheran, some are still around in this area, who were sponsoring, at that time there was a hospital that was starting for the treatment of tuberculosis. And so... they would run their ads for births, deaths, marriages, church functions in my grandfather's newspaper. So,
like a noteboard.
Like a noteboard. Yeah. And they sponsored this. It started out as a sanitarium for the treatment of tuberculosis, a lung disease. And the treatment was to breathe rarefied air and get plenty of sunshine. And in Colorado, we have over 360 days of sunshine. Even though it might snow, the next day the sun comes out. So it was started by a Swedish doctor, and that hospital is still in existence, called Swedish Hospital.
Here in Denver?
Yeah, here in Denver. It's very famous. It's been sold 2 or 3 times, but kept the name Swedish throughout. And as the patients got better, they sent for their families, and that's what actually started. It's a suburb of Denver called Inglewood. And that all grew up around, and my grandfather was part of bringing those people in, and it was a Swedish doctor who started it.
I need to go back a little bit, I think, because he ended up in Denver quite quickly, right? After the... Why did he... Was Denver a Swedish community at that time?
Okay, very good question. Yes, so part of the thought was he was looking to purchase a newspaper. The ones he was working at in Chicago and Minnesota weren't for sale. So he had to go west, so to
he
speak,
just moved west
until he could find one that was available for purchase. Yeah.
And did this newspaper go in the family, or what happened to it?
Okay, yes, so we continued as a family newspaper. I worked at the newspaper myself.
Oh, you did?
My father worked there, and it became important enough because of the immigration that my grandfather had started with the notarization of those job acceptance letters. The Swedish government decided we would make this into a consulate, honorary consulate.
Here in Denver.
In Denver. So my father...
Based on the newspaper.
On the newspaper.
Yeah.
So my father worked there. My grandfather was a family newspaper. Even myself worked there. So in about 1970, my father got an appointment from the King of Sweden. Back then, honorary consuls were appointed by the king. And so we have a crest that says Kungliga Svenska Konsulatet. Royal.
When was this? This must
in
be
1970.
1970s.
Yeah. And so we covered Colorado, Wyoming, and New Mexico. helping Swedish citizens to get their passports, visas, voting. If they we had death cases, kidnappings. We had everything that can happen, as you know, for any consulate. Now became our responsibility. But because of the connection of the newspaper and all of its connections, we had a lot of government connections, and we could help people.
This
do
is
things.
what I meant
Yeah.
in the beginning. That
Yeah.
this is like an epic thing. That is like a hub almost.
Absolutely.
That sort of. Almost, I can see like the wires going into that center of the newspaper with the Swedish communications and sort of organizing in a way and informative for the Swedes in the area, or maybe in the entire U.S. I don't know that. But.
Yeah, exactly. So that connection with the hospital and others and the government, and it was also part of the legal newspaper at the time. So anyone running ads for probate notices of creditors or births and deaths and like that would run an ad in the newspaper. So that was the connection that I think helped bring people from Sweden. One of the things that people came to Colorado, in addition to the mountains, which is very similar to Sweden, people from Sweden love to visit here, very similar, but was for farming. And because of his farming background, you probably know the Swedes had with them the knowledge of irrigation. And so we're actually high mountain desert, where farming, like towards the Nebraska and Kansas and Colorado to the east of the mountains, is difficult unless you know how to irrigate.
Yeah.
The Swedes,
Because the water is up there,
the
but
water's
you
up,
need to...
yeah, they knew how to do that.
Yeah.
And so many of them actually went into the farming and ranching business.
But not you.
No.
You,
So
you
I
were in the
continued.
informative business.
So on my part, I was probably one of the first to go on to college and then law school. Went to the University of Denver, undergrad and law school both. And then I got my appointment in about 1983 as vice consul for Sweden. So my father was still
so this
alive at the
consul
time.
thing
Yes.
was inherited.
Well, not exactly. You don't inherit it as such. You still have to be nominated by the Swedish government, and they have
Or
to.
the king back then.
The king back then,
Yeah.
and by the time they realize there's more of a need for us to transfer, it's a way a small country, Sweden, can have representation without having to have a paid career diplomat in every location that Swedes might travel or live. So they said to me, especially when they knew I got a law degree, they would get free legal advice. And I helped in many cases, help Swedes. And so I got my appointment initially as vice consul in 83. And at that time, the appointments were no longer done by the king. They were through the Department of Foreign Ministry. So then the United States government has to approve of your appointment. You don't just inherit it.
Oh,
It's
no.
not automatic. It takes about a year, and they do a FBI background check and make sure that
To make
you're
sure
a
that
proper
you're
person.
okay. Even
Yeah.
though you're an American, you know.
Yeah. Yeah. And so then they issue the legal term, the United States Department of State issues what's called an exequatur, which is a legal term for a license to represent a foreign country in the U.S. And so I got that in the early 80s. And then as my grandfather retired, I continued, and the consulate was at my law office. And so it's very unusual, just say, to have 3 generations representing Sweden on an honorary basis.
Yeah.
And that's the reason, as a thank you, honorary means we're not paid. We're donating our time. But we have the full authority, as any elected consul, to issue passports, visas, work permits. We report to the embassy.
Oh, that's why it's necessary with a check also, with the background check.
The background check. So that was the nice thank you after about 20 years of honorary service, the king of Sweden honored me with a knighthood. And
that
I got
is
that
just-
at the Royal Palace in Stockholm. Yeah.
When was this?
And so that came in about, I guess we'll say 2005, after I'd put in about 14 or 15 years of service. And by the time I just retired last year, and I think I was the longest standing honorary consul in the United States as a U.S. citizen representing Sweden, as most ones who donate their time do it for maybe 3 to 5, possibly 10 years, but not 40 plus years. So
I know that you see this from the inside of your family, looking out in a way.
Yes.
But when I look from my perspective at your family, you have your grandfather coming here, immediately fighting for the Americans, going back to Europe to do that also. And then we flash forward, and you have an American citizen who's been working for the Swedish government in a way, like honorary, becoming a knight of Sweden.
Correct, yes.
That's just, for me, it's just mind-blowing in a way.
Well,
how does that feel?
It felt wonderful to be recognized.
I'm talking to a knight. Like, this table should be round. Like
a round table.
Yeah.
No, it was a very nice honor, and it's the Royal Order of the Polar Star is what's given to you or bestowed on you. And as a thank you for a non-Swedish citizen to help Sweden and the government, it's one of the highest honors to receive in that respect. So I was very honored and humbled to receive that, but it was a nice thank you.
Yeah, of course. So how does life as a knight play out now in Denver?
So I through the Consular Corps of Colorado.
Yeah.
My father was one of the founding members. That's a group of honorary consuls and career consuls who thought we should get together, have monthly luncheons, talk with the people who we need to, like at the airport and so on, for if we have visitors, so we know who we're going to make the proper diplomatic connections. And so I and my father worked our way up through the, I guess we'll say, board. So I was initially treasurer, then secretary, then vice dean and dean. And similar to my father, he had all those same positions. Right now, the Consular Corps of Colorado consists of 46 different nations represented, 6 of which are career consuls, like Mexico, Peru, Japan, Canada. Those are the career consuls who are fully paid. The rest are small countries. All of the Scandinavian countries are represented. It's similar to me, donating time, and they all recognize, and I don't really promote myself as sir, but they know.
Yeah, they know.
And that's
maybe that's
helpful.
enough.
That's enough for me, yeah.
Do you feel as a Swede?
Yes, yeah. So
I identify in a way, if that's someone you can identify as a Swedish
absolutely
person.
So for example, when between undergrad and law school, we went to the University of Denver, I went to the University of Uppsala, and I took courses there. And they were all in English by Swedish professors. It was during a summer session, but they were international law courses. Well, then I got to meet Swedish citizens, students whom we've kept in contact all these years. And then as we were growing up, we also had an exchange student, Inga-Lena, was her name. And I was always kidding because my parents waited to have her as an exchange student until I vacated my bedroom to go to college.
Because they didn't want you to.
I said I would have shared. But anyway, she was a wonderful person. We met her family, parents. They had a farm in Sweden near Motala.
Okay.
And so we would go and visit them in the summers, and we had a lot of connections with Sweden.
And you still do, I assume. Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
And if you go back to because I heard like a bird in the back, there's something, correct me now if I'm wrong, but the newspaper that was built by your grandfather and started to function as this sort of hub of, it still exists in a way, but it's underground.
Okay, what happened there, yes, that method of doing the newspaper was...
With the machine, the German machine.
That was becoming outmoded.
Yeah.
And things were becoming more and more computerized, if you will. And so the city and county of Denver, at one point, we were located downtown, 12th in California. There was a 4 square block area that the city said, we want to build a convention center. And so the city has the right to, so to speak, condemn, it's by adverse possession, those square blocks, and they have to pay you a reasonable amount to move your business somewhere else and get those square blocks available to build this convention center. And so when they came to our newspaper...
It's nothing unusual. It happens in Sweden.
No, it happens all the time. Yeah. We said, well, this is outmoded. These huge big presses is the size of like a whole room.
Yeah.
So it was the old style. We feed a huge big sheet of
cast iron
papers and are made of metal, and the mold is all outmoded. Nobody wanted to buy it. It was really just functioning because we were putting it. My grandfather primarily, he's ready to retire and so on. So when they couldn't find anybody to buy it, there's no sense moving it. They just pushed it underneath the Convention Center. And so those huge presses is now like a time capsule. It's buried underneath the Denver Convention Center. It's someday in the whatever future, somebody is going to see what are these contraptions, huge machines underneath.
But are they just dumped in it, or is it just built in like in a room?
No, they were dumped in, and then I think they covered over as part of the foundation.
Wow.
So
that's going to be there for, it feels like forever.
Forever, yeah. But it was a good, I guess we'll say, time for my grandfather to retire from the newspaper, and then the consulate continued on with me. One of my other things that also continued, I started the Swedish American Chamber of Commerce of Colorado.
Oh, yeah.
And so as an attorney, I incorporated that entity as a not-for-profit organization. And then every year you have to keep it with, I'm the registered agent. The principal place of business is my law office. But every year it's gone through different other Swedes, primarily, who, again, donate their time to be on the board. And we promoted all kinds, because the consulate was for individual questions, births, deaths, passport, voting. But what about business connection? And Sweden had said they wanted to promote business. And so, including for skiing industry, and there's, as you know, there's all kinds of connections. So that chamber hosted many, I guess we'll say, special trips to Sweden, trade missions. It brought a lot of product into the United States. Yeah. Chainsaws from Husqvarna, for example, became a popular thing for logging industry. Yeah. There's, the Thule ski rack. Jet bags are popular for skiers. Yeah. Of course, the Volvo as the cars, they're excellent in the snow.
Would you say that Denver is it differs from other towns in America because of that Swedish heritage? But it feels like there's a Scandinavian. You mentioned the mountains. You mentioned the environment that surrounds Denver, and you also the Swedish farmers that came here. Does Denver differ from?
I think so, because of
Is
the
there
mountains.
a Scandinavian vibe here in a way?
It's very much so vibrant here.
Yeah.
The only thing we're missing is the fjords or ocean.
But the fjords are more Norway.
I know it's Norway, but otherwise we have all the seasons, and we have all the sports. I mean, Denver is one of the few teams, if you think about this, has I guess we'll say professional hockey, and these many Swedes are on the hockey team.
Yeah.
Gabriel Landeskog is very famous.
Swedes are good at hockey.
Very good at hockey. And then we have basketball, Denver Nuggets. We have Rockies, the baseball. We have the Broncos, American football. We also have, I guess we'll say, soccer team. And so Swedes, as you know, are very outdoor oriented, and we have all the different seasons, all the sports.
But so are Americans, outdoor people. I'm traveling the country now, so maybe I see that from a special angle. So I see all the outdoors people because all the outdoors people are camping next to me in a way.
Exactly.
So I get the experience that Americans are also quite outdoorsy.
Outdoorsy, yeah. I think that's true.
Yeah. So I know that you are born here.
Yes.
Yeah, and. You have lived here in Denver your entire life, more or less, except for studies.
Studies abroad, yes, like in Sweden, correct.
But I still have to do this because I do this in every episode, and I love this segment of the podcast. And you also said that you identify as a Swede.
Okay, yes.
Where in Denver is actually on the map here.
Denver is actually, interestingly enough, equidistant from each. This is exactly the same distance to the West Coast as it is to the East Coast. So we are exactly in the middle of the United States.
I didn't know that. That's interesting.
That was important when I did the Swedish Chamber of Commerce.
Yeah.
We could promote that companies should come and have their headquarters in Denver so they could, I guess, service both coasts.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's very good for me to know because that means I'm halfway to the East Coast.
Exactly.
Yeah. So anyway, you're born here, and Värmland, where your grandfather is from, is somewhere around here in Sweden, because this is Sweden.
Correct.
And you identify as a Swede in Denver.
Yes.
Where is home?
What do you mean?
For you. Where is home for you?
Well, I would say Denver is home, but a Swedish home, so to speak.
Yeah, a Swedish home. Could you write your signature somewhere close to Denver?
Oh,
I know
I
it's
see.
black
You've signed others. Okay, yeah, I can do this. I'd even then put an arrow or something. Okay. And there's
So
Denver.
if you were to write a letter from home, which is Denver to you, to Värmland, where your family comes from, what would that letter be today?
Oh, how interesting. Well, one would be we want to continue to keep the connections because I think it's important to have the international diplomatic influence. And once you see how other societies live, and in particularly Sweden, we're very proud of how clean and industrious and honest, work ethic, all the inventions that have come, the propeller, the three-point lap belt, all the things. It makes me happy to represent a country that has those connections, and I want to keep those.
Yeah.
So it would be, let's visit each other more often.
Yeah. Talk more, in a way.
And talk more, yeah.
Like we did today.
Absolutely.
It was lovely to have you in the trailer, Sir Donald.
My pleasure.
I'm going to call you Sir for
Okay, thank you.
rest of the day. Thank you very much. I really appreciate it. Thank you.
You have listened to Letters from America, a weekly road trip podcast celebrating the Swedish heritage in the United States. Produced in collaboration with the Embassy of Sweden in Washington, D.C., Volvo Cars USA, Volvo Trucks USA, and Airstream.